Redditors, what's the stupidest thing you've said to a police officer? I was a scared 16-year-old kid. I went the wrong way down a one-way street. Saw that the road became a two-way just a block ahead by the time I realized it was a one-way saint. So I kept going instead of trying to turn around illegally. Cop was at the intersection I went through, pulled me over, scared the crap out of me, yelling at me about the red light I ran. The stupidest thing I tried to say to a cop was that I was going the wrong way down a one-way. He told me to shut up when I started talking and came back with a very big ticket. I thought it through and went and took pictures of the intersection. See, what I was ticketed for was running a red light. There are no red lights the wrong way down a one-way street. Think about it. That would be crazy. So I went to court to contest my ticket. I wore a suit, was respectful, and when the judge asked almost sarcastically while looking at my particular info, so you're going to tell me you didn't do it or something? How I told him actually, sir, yes, because it's impossible to run a red light that isn't there. That got his interest, and he made eye contact. He sat up a little bit and asked what I meant. I told him about there not being a red light the wrong way down a one-way street. I asked if I could present the pictures, which the bailiff brought up. He laughed while looking at them, which included the street corners and enough surroundings to prove it was in fact the cross streets mentioned. I told the judge that I was apologizing to the officer and trying to tell him about the wrong way down a one-way, but got told to shut up and wasn't able to explain. The judge laughed again and said, well, he would have cited you for the right thing if he had just listened, but I can't cite you. Clearly you didn't run a red light, and he dismissed it. I only had to pay the court filing fee of $25. Yeehaw. I haven't been pulled over in years. You got a ticket this morning. I didn't think that would be in the system so soon. Makes me sniff a joint. Doesn't smell like any weed I've ever smoked. May I scratch my nose on Mr. Smith's shoulder? I was handcuffed. My nose itched like heck. I was allowed to blow me. So, I was delivering booze to a friend's place as he was having a drunken party and I thought I'd be nice. Anyway, his buddy spills a half a tumbler of scotch down my shirt. I had to get to work, so I take off and hit one of those drinking and driving stops. Of course the cop is like, you, and how much have you had to drink? Me, nothing. My friend spilled scotch on me. Cop, me. Fine, blow me, you'll find the truth. Cop, excuse me, me, thinking, and, this is how I go to jail, me, oh, no, I mean, blow me, the thing, the straw you blow into. Cop proceeds to laugh, gives me a breath test and I blow 0.0, on with my day, huh? He asked was there a reason I was speeding? I said yes. He asked what was it? I said I like speeding. It was the 31st of December, 1999. A friend and I thought we were so freaking slick. We were standing by an ATM at the stroke of midnight. We thought that the Y2K virus was going to cause the ATMs to just start spitting money out. Right before midnight, a police officer, seeing us in our all black garb, asked what we were doing. When we told him, he started laughing his butt off and told us he'd split the money 3 ways with us if it started shooting out. Sadly, none of us made any extra money that night. I was pulled over 2 weeks after passing my test. The policeman asked me to wind down my window. I did. He then aggressively asked me what is it outside. I didn't know what he was getting at, so I replied cold. He shook his head and said no, duck, now turn your fricking lights on. I was driving Uber in an unfamiliar town, and at about 3 AM, I asked an officer if there were any good donut shops nearby. Did you really just ask me that? That Starbucks is closed and I need coffee. Oh my god, as I realized the implication. In the end we had a good laugh and he led me to an open coffee shop. Semi-drunk me being escorted out of a bar by an officer at 21. Well, going to exercise my Second Amendment right and tell you to go frick yourself. Cop as he begins to cuff me. Dumbass. That's the Third Amendment. My sober friend walking with us. Actually it's the First Amendment. Got caught having sex in my Jeep in a restaurant parking lot. Told officer but she's so hot. Officer responded that's not a valid excuse. I was smashed. Waiting for a bus. I wasn't making a scene. I was just visibly wasted. I could barely sit straight. So while I'm sitting there, Kinda zoning out. 2 cops approach me and ask me for it, which I somehow managed to find and show them. Then they started asking me what I was on, to which I responded nothing. I'm just really drunk. They keep pressing and yelling. They were furious for some reason. I guess because I was barely coherent, when one of them gets in my face and screams, "What did you take?" To which I respond, "Fricking ethanol." A few years back my mate and I were walking down the street towards the bars in our town, rural Australia. We were drinking from a plastic bottle filled with vodka and juice, which isn't legal here, and the police drove past us. I quickly threw the bottle in the bin, but they saw us and pulled over. They 2 officers, 1 female 1 male, were taking down our details and we were drunkenly trying to get out the fine. I said, "We'll do anything to get out of this." She replied, "Oh yeah? Like what?" Then I blurted out, "Dance for you." My mate and I then proceeded to do about 30 seconds of the choreography to Michael Jackson's Thriller on the street, magnificently lit by their patrol car headlights. It worked. No fine. I was about 6 years old and I had been home from school for maybe an hour. There was a knock at the door and I ran to go get it, thinking my friends wanted to play. I swung open the door to see a female police officer and I said, "Nobody's home," and slammed the door. I realized my mistake and went and got my mom to answer the door. Turns out the officer had shown up to let us know that my dad had been killed by a drunk driver earlier that day. Turns out being embarrassed wasn't the only issue that day. Oink. He told me to stop being a stupid drunk 16-year-old teen to go home. He was right. Was in my car at a park at night after it had closed with my girlfriend at the time. Cops roll up right after we had finished in the backseat, as we were trespassing by being in the park at this time. I get out of the car to talk to the officer, and he grills me, asking about my girlfriend. He asks me, "Is she decent?" And I'm thinking like, yeah, she's pretty hot, so I say, "Yes." Officer then goes and opens the car door and sees her still naked in the car, and goes, "No, she's not. Get dressed." He then gave us a warning and told us to leave. Stopped at a ride program, basically a roadblock checking for impaired driving. I was just getting off a 12-hour shift. "Anything to drink tonight?" "Yeah, I had a bottle of Coke and some water." Cue 15 minutes of questioning. Never be a smartest to a cop. Crossing the border and asked what I was going to buy. I said Coke. "Americans are the best Coke." "I am Canadian. We no longer have vanilla cherry Coke." I know my rights. He wasn't a cop, but this is kind of in the same vein. I was buying a gun and had to fill out the application on a touchscreen they had. One of the questions was, "Are you now or have you ever been a fugitive from the law?" I looked up to the man selling the gun, and after I read the question aloud I said, "Who in their right mind would answer yes to that?" I thought it was funny, but he looked at me coldly and said, "You are seriously jeopardizing your ability to purchase this weapon." "Can I pet your horse?" To the mounted police officer at Mardi Gras, 2014. After a night out, me and a couple mates decided to walk home, about 5 miles. After a couple miles the alcohol started to wear off and we thought about getting a taxi if one came past. We see something in the distance and being sure it was a taxi we waved it down and proceeded to try and get in. It was an unmarked police car and we were given an absolute bollocking by the plainclothes police officers inside. It didn't help when one of my drunken friends tried to be a smartass and said, "Prove it." When I was 19, me and buddies were all out on an all-out drinking bender. We had a DD. It's about 3 AM and we're all slammed drunk. Cop pulls us over for going 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. Cop walks up to car and immediately says, "I smell alcohol." He asks everyone for their IDs. I hand him mine, to which he is quick to hand it back. "Sir, that is your debit card." I immediately start laughing because I knew at that moment it was a guarantee I was going to the drunk tank for underage drinking. I was right. Worst way to bribe a cop. "Yo, James, hide the weed." Was in a field playing football, soccer, and thought it would be funny to shout this directed towards an alleyway. As it turns out, it's not that funny. Got arrested. Throwing party in my dorm room in college. Everyone in attendance was underage. 2 cops knock on the door, 1 male, 1 female. They end up being pretty nice and explain they got a noise complaint and will trust us to shut it down. As they were about to leave I asked the lady cop, "Aren't you going to pat me down, officer? Got a ticket." To my brother-in-law who's a cop. Yeah, well, I fricked your sister in the butt. Well, once when I was little my mom got pulled over for running a red light. The cop came over and asked her if she knew why she was being pulled over and she said no. To which I replied, "You're mom. I told you you went through that light." She was not happy. Kids say the darndest things. Got out of my car, stormed back to his and said I'm late. I actually ordered 2 cops to move their vehicles as they were blocking an entry to my site. Were I not on the job, they'd probably have ignored me. My favorite interaction with a cop that was just the normal routine was back when I was 21 or 22. I went out with friends for a tour of drinking on a Saturday. Started with a baseball game, then walked around to a handful of bars, so we spent about 8-9 hours getting trashed. This was the plan. It was a good plan. Part of this plan was for friends to come pick me up at the end of the night because the people I was hanging out with had plans and I knew I was going to be too drunk even for drunk driving. Bars close. Downtown is empty. Nothing is open at 3:30 AM. So I wander around, waiting for my ride, and I have to pee bad. Nowhere is open and no one is around, so in my infinite inebriated wisdom I decide to just pee on the sidewalk next to the street. Not even 5 seconds into my pee there's a spotlight on me and a cop getting out of the car. Cop, what in the heck do you think you're doing? Me. Peeing. Cop, come on over here. Me. I have to finish first. Cop waits surprisingly patiently. I make racehorse peeing look like a leaky faucet. The cop then proceeds to tell me all the charges I could get for peeing in public and asks me what I was thinking. I told him my master plan of getting drunk all night, then waiting for a ride. My friends were late. Public intoxication wasn't part of the plan. Neither was peeing by police spotlight. He continued to tell me that I should be going to the drunk tank. Blah blah blah. But he let me go. I sat on the curb and he watched me smoke cigarettes until my friends came. I was 18 and possibly high, long time ago, can't remember, and when he asked for license, registration and insurance, I gave him my health insurance card. He just looked at me and said, "What is this, son? I'm not your doctor." Never actually gave him my proof of car insurance. My aunt had a terrible divorce when I was a kid. The type of divorce where police came to the house. One time 10-year-old me asked a cop, "Do you use the sirens if you have diarrhea?" He was a good sport and laughed a little and said, "Kid, I am not classified to tell you that." Then he winked so I would take it as a yes. At a Halloween party in a 3rd-story apartment, outside smoking, I see someone in a cop costume in the parking lot. Yell at him, "Who the F would dress as a cop for Halloween?" He immediately broke up the party. Cop, "Do you have any drugs?" Me, "I wish." Bought a really nice wooden box of cigars, wrapped in bubble wrap and duct tape, and put in the trunk. The box was a gift for a friend. I do not smoke, and I didn't want to risk some damage during the trip to his house. Well, police makes me pull over. Officer asks me where I'm going. He asks me to pop the trunk. He opens it and finds the wrap box, which sort of looks like a bag of coke or H or whatever. He obviously asks me what's inside the wrapping. I say the truth, cigars. He doesn't trust my word, so he asks me if he can unwrap it. I say yes, of course, officer. Point is, he can't manage to unwrap the thing. I have the brilliant idea of taking my utility knife from the trunk to cut the wrapping and just get it over with. Mind you, said officer was bent over with his head inside the trunk still trying to unwrap the Gordian wrapping, while another officer was standing behind me after having checked license and registration. I say, I found my knife while holding said open knife in my hand and pointing it towards the officer. I'll just let you imagine the rest. Not me, but my in-laws. They were at a New Year's party and had a couple of drinks. My mother-in-law isn't much of a drinker, so she had a couple of glasses of wine early and then switched to pop and stayed sober to drive. They got stopped at a roadblock on the way home, and when the cop asked if she'd been drinking tonight, she replied only a couple of drinks earlier than I switched to coke around 9. The cop laughed and sent them on their way. Didn't happen to me, but when I was in high school, one of my classmates was pulled over for suspected DWI. When he was asked to recite the alphabet, he sang the entire alphabet song, along with the ending "Next time won't you sing with me." When I was about 15 years old, a few of my friends and I were pulled over at around 3 AM, way past curfew, and we were all stoned out of our minds. The only other girl and I were asked to sit on the tailgate to answer some questions. The cop asks me, "Why are you smiling at me? This isn't funny." I respond with, "I'm sorry officer, I wasn't aware I was smiling." When passing by two cops wrestling a troublemaker and forcing him in the backseat, I asked if they by any chance could drive a certain route, dropping me off at home. Guy kept driving over the corner of my grandfather's lawn. He lived on the corner, so the same truck would cut the corner by driving over a patch of grass. My grandfather had enough of it, so he got out a 2x4, slammed a bunch of nails in it, and buried it in the torn up patch of grass. Sure enough, the same truck hits it one day, blowing out not just one but two tires. He's freaking mad. He calls the cops. Officer shows up, hears about what happened, and tries to explain to my grandfather that while the truck driver shouldn't be driving on the grass, that putting the board with nails in there was dangerous and could have gotten someone hurt or killed. At this point, he's just trying to give my grandfather a warning. My grandfather responds, "Crap, if I couldn't find the nails I was gonna put a bouncing Betty, a landmine, in there." The officer rubbed his brow as if in distinct pain and squeezed out the words, "You really shouldn't tell me that." Thankfully my uncle was there to stop my grandfather from repeating his claim or making things any worse. I made a pit stop for some food on Highway 70 at like 10 PM back in 2014. When I got back on the road I forgot to turn my lights back on, so obviously Mr. Police Officer helped me out with that by turning on his own. When he pulled me over he asked where I was headed. "I'm going to Colorado, officer." "Oh, what takes you there?" "Highway 70 sir." Then I accidentally handed him a bus pass instead of my license. Not a police officer, but I once said this to a security guard who was searching our car. "Don't worry, I don't do drugs. I am drugs." Admitting guilt when they ask, "Do you know why they're here?" They oftentimes don't know why they're there. They are just following up on a call with loose information based on what an outsider observed. They don't know about the bodies. I remember some years ago, some friends and I were shooting a scene for a zombie movie we were making, and had stopped in this field a little of the road. There were like 5 of us, bloody, standing at various points in the field, and the rest conversing around the cars. When a police car pulled up, they asked, "What are you guys doing here?" Cue my friend saying, I lost my cat." They spent the next few minutes trying to help us search for the fake cat. It was a whole thing. You have been visited by the hamster of joy. Comment, "I like chicken to live a happy and full of joy like the joy hamster life." If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.